Alright, so apologies for being gone for the past couple of days, but I needed to go take care of some things, which are namely the lights not working and the receptacles in the house here were not functional, with some of them tripping the circuit breaker, which is not good. Those were all over the house too. Alright, so the topic here is at hand it's about balance, but this is over a course of a conversation that I began to realize I should probably talk about this and bring this up, because this is something that is incredibly important. But since, you know, it's in the background, but this is important, but it's over the span of a lifetime. It's not something that is urgent, so to speak. This is just something that if people don't ever recognize the importance of, they'll just kind of dismiss and go on, and they'll never really address this, or they will address it until after they break and snap and do something they regret, or after they get hurt to the point where they shut down and they just don't open up. And in cases of some others, like sadly some of my friends, they end up taking their lives and passing away because, you know, checking out early because they can't get past some of the issues in their life. Balance is tied into that somewhere, but that's slightly different because it deals with depression and not getting around what the obstacles that are in their life, or the trauma, or anything that causes you distress. Let me see here. Anyway, back to the point. I will be addressing some points from a conversation I had with I don't want to call him a friend, but I met him not too long ago, and he's not bad, but he was coming at this one particular topic from a totally different angle. So, while his topic was about grace and how it's important and needed, I was coming at it from an aspect of balance and foundations. Now, I'm trying to keep this as simple as I can. I won't be reading everything from that conversation, but I will address it at the end. And while it does go in a different direction, it's important to note that you got to give yourself time to heal, you got to forgive yourself for the mistakes that you make, which you, or should I say Christians, can put under as grace to an extent, because we all make mistakes, and some people do not forgive. They've not learned that. They've not learned moving on. That's a problem, and that ties in with balance, as in going your life attaching to the wrong values, or just simply not doing things that are healthy or needed. So instead of going through life making mistakes and learning from them, growing from what you've done in the past and not making them again, some people end up doing the exact opposite. They hate themselves, they shut down, they punish themselves whenever they make a mistake, and that's the complete opposite. So I'll be bringing that in because it does tie in with it, but I spent some time thinking about this while I was offline, and I realized more and more I should address this. Now, again, this is going to be in between the church and those outside, to the best of my ability, anyway. Alright, so here's the list. It's hard to grow. 1. When you feel safe. 2. When you are closed off or shut down. 3. When there are too many distractions. 4. When depressed or narrow-sighted. 5. When overly focused on self. 6. When disconnected, disengaged, burned out, confused, or lost. 7. Being used like an emotional tampons, which deals with balance because you're overextending too much for someone who may actually matter, you know, someone like family, relative, someone you care about. But the point is, you're overextending to the point where you are endangering or hurting or breaking yourself. Especially with men, who many people go to for help and advice, but if there is no limits, there's no boundaries, it could very well cause problems for both of them, because the men don't always handle things emotionally well. That's something that women do very well with. It's just because, in general, women are more social and sociable than men. But number one, when you are safe, you can open up, talk, whatever. There's rest and relaxation. So you are able to come back to a center of balance so that you can refresh, recharge. If you're an athlete, you can rehydrate yourself. You know, get that water, get that electrolytes back into your body. Same thing, and just different category. But it's still incredibly important. However, if you stay there too long, you stagnate and nothing changes. That's just being balanced and staying there permanently. Some people, I think, in the cases of the severe cases where there's trauma and abuse, balance is going to look differently for them. But for everyone else, that's not really the case. For number two, when you were closed off or shut down, well, if you were going back to a center and figuring out how to refocus yourself, that's good. However, if there's trauma involved, you might need a specialist to find ways to deal with that so you can grow. That makes it hard to grow, for sure. Number three, when there are too many distractions. Work, faith, friends, spouse, lover, kids, responsibilities, taxes, bills, your pets. All of this matters and they pull from your attention. So if you're trying to mature or grow in a certain area, mainly, let's just use work as an example, where you got some new equipment that you need to learn about, and it requires you to sit down and read for a couple of hours and listen to some videos as you're trying to figure out how this works. Just a good example. But you can't do it because you're constantly being interrupted. There's constantly engagements happening. Alright, number four is a big one because unfortunately when people's minds and hearts get messed with, it's really hard to grow. It's really hard to refocus and to rebalance, recenter yourself when you are depressed or you are focused on one specific target. Generally speaking, both are tunnel visioned per se. It's just that when you're depressed, you're either not thinking about much or you're just kind of like shut down and you're focusing on yourself and basically what happened. So I would have to say number four, you want to step back and not focus on that. Just focus on making sure you're at a healthy point in your life so you can tackle whatever needs to be tackled. But some people don't have that luxury, especially if there's a death in the family and you're the one who's responsible for putting things together. I just got back from a funeral basically this Monday, and there's another friend who had another funeral. In fact, two friends had funerals recently, and it's heartbreaking. It's not something that you can shake off or fix easily enough, you know, to get yourself back up to a place where you can work and basically be settled again. That's something else I want to point out here is if you're not settled, you're not going to be able to get back to where you were and to do what you need to do, which is also something important about balance. Let me see here. Well, when it comes down to relationships and such, some people put too much emphasis on it. And while that's important, I will never disagree that relationships and all that are not important. I'm just saying that when you focus too much on that and not on what it needs in order to survive, you may end up just going down the wrong path and focusing on things that are wants rather than needs. Being attentive to the other person is definitely important, but if you're not getting the relationship stabilized, you're not doing it any good, so to speak. Alright, number 5, when you're overly focused on self. So this is a bit interesting because on one hand, learning to get yourself healthy, learning to put your needs first is good. But on the flip side, when you're also, when there's a lot of other issues like pride, you're very egotistical, and it's all about you and nothing about anyone else, you're not going to be able to grow. You're not going to be able to balance, because you're not seeing any issues or anything that's wrong that needs to be fixed or adjusted or anything. Basically, you're not going to see that you're wrong or that you have needs that are to be met. And that's personal, but it still also ties in with this whole thing with balance being needed. Let me see here. Number 6, when disconnected, disengaged, burned out, confused, or lost. I did not say wandering, because just because you're walking around doesn't mean you're lost, and it doesn't mean that, well, that you need anything really. It just means that you're not on a set path. And sometimes that is what people need, because they don't need structure like some other people do. Other people, they need structure, and they need instructions, and they need directions and boundaries and all of that, because for them the process is not something that they can easily come up with on their own. Alright, let me see here. So let me see. It's hard to grow, disconnected, disengaged. That just basically ties back in with number 4, with number 2 with being shut down, shut off, or depressed, where like you need to come back to a place where you can kind of heal, refocus, recenter, and re-engage, so to speak. However, let's see. Alright, moving on to number 7, being used like emotional tampons and overbalancing, overextending there. I did kind of already explain that a little bit when I brought that up, but I do want to say that the whole thing about it being hard to grow, well, if you're constantly being used, it's all about the other person. It's not about you and your needs. So you're constantly addressing other people instead of yourself to that point. And as far as what balance goes, the church has done a very poor job of saying what men's needs are so that they can adequately meet them, fix them, recenter them, refocus them, rebalance, all of that. And that is incredibly important for a man's life, and compared to a woman's life, generally they have a lot of structure and they have a lot of people in their life who can help them out if they're missing. Even if it's a bit on the wrong side with social media and those of less reputable, there's still something there for them. But for men, it's a lot harder, it's a lot less. Fathers and mentorship are disappearing, and many other men are checking out. I've already addressed that in another video, in a couple previous back. That is not good. I do want to also say that it is a process, and there is time that is needed to be able to understand the different points of all of this. This isn't just simply one and done. This is a process of understanding where you're at and seeing what the problems are, and then seeing what the solution or what is needed to re-center yourself. And in some cases, you're just too busy, you're too preoccupied, and there's no way anyone can get through to you until something happens or changes. That's not always good, but again, some people just need to be at a different stage for them to actually kind of grow a little bit and to figure some of the stuff out. Alright. Now, I want to say lastly, when it comes down to the church, so to speak, they put a lot of emphasis on relationships, and as the topic I'll go into with the conversation, stuff like grace, where it does tie in with balance and Balance and Foundations, but it comes at it from a different angle that is not really so much focused on the self as it is focused on the body or the community. Both are needed, but again, if you can't help yourself, what good are you to anyone else? So some people just won't see it, and that's fine. However, it's still valid. And I want to end with the conversation that I was talking about with this other guy. His name's Greg, by the way, and we had a very good conversation, a couple of conversations, but if he's not going to budge, that's basically it. There's nothing else to talk about. He wants to approach all of this whole thing, this whole topic of balance from grace. And while I get it, you know, forgiving yourself and being able to give yourself permission to fail, and so you can learn and basically fix what's broken or off, yeah, that's important. It ties in with recentering and refocusing yourself, and basically what I've been saying. However, that's coming at it from a biblical or scriptural angle, which some people, they don't care about. So there is scriptural and biblical on one side. On the other side, it's about your own personal health and how there should be a balance so that you can get yourself together. There should be a place in between where people can meet up and actually have some discussions. Alright, let me see here. I'm not going to read everything. Alright, so he references Leviticus 26, 9 through 12. Look upon you with favor, make you fruitful, increase your numbers, keep my covenant, blah, blah, blah. You will still be eating last year's harvest. We have to move it out and make room for the new. Some of the stuff doesn't actually match up at all. He's just trying to be nice and polite. Alright, moving on here. He sent me a video about how to receive grace. Kendrick Vinar. Apparently he's a pastor from the church there, and he's not bad, but I would have to say I disagree with him on some points. The church that they're at is called the Grace Church, by the way, so whether or not that actually matters about the message, I'm not entirely certain about. But I brought it up because that was the topic, and that is also the name of the church. Alright. Yep. Prayer request and all of that, saying he was thankful for the conversations, the meetup. Yeah, definitely. Alright, so I reached out to him after all of that, and I just said, hey, it kills me how the church is so isolated from the problems that have popped up in society. And you know what? I don't even think he checked it out at all. So basically he reiterated the same message here. However, when you're focusing on your own health, that is a very valid response to what is going on in today's world, especially here in the U.S. There's a lot of issues that are just simply not being fixed. They're not being fixed and worked on. Excuse me. Some people want to say it's gynocentrism, or it's feminism, or if you talk to some of the others, they're going to say it's the patriarchy. Like, I'm not going to get into all of that, but if you know that there are issues that you can actively work on, that is something that is important no matter where you stand. You fix what you can, and in some cases, if you have a family or others, you need to check out so you can make sure they're growing up without all of these issues either. Anyway, moving on. Let me see here. I pretty much ended saying it's extremely hard for me to stand by and say or do nothing at all. But little by little, I found places to be and those to reach out to help encourage as best I can, or to pass tools off to those men I run into to help with their own lives, and in some cases, family. One of my friends had a sister who passed away, and this was right after she gave birth, and frankly, he had to check out for a little bit because it was hard. You have a family member who's in that situation. Yeah, it's brutal. Alright, so I'm going to read this off word for word here, just to try to show you where he's coming from and how the problem here with this one particular person. As awesome as he is, and I do respect his stance, if he's only ever going to come from this one particular direction, that's not helpful at all. Hey David, hope the day is going well, my friend. What I would say, or the answer, is going to be the same in my opinion through my experiences, and that is trusting and walking with God daily so that the relationship builds with Him. Churches, pastors, Christian music, those are all good, but it's God and Jesus. Focus on God, Jesus, and receiving grace. We at this church are here for you and would love to help you in any way we can teaching this biblical principle. This biblical principle is what stands out to me. You see, when you try to meet other people's needs, there are a couple of ways you can do so. One of them is with Scripture, as we all know. However, people need more than Scripture to help build, to help focus their lives. Now, whether or not you're going to get personal and try to pass things off as tools, or you're going to simply point out other parts of history to use as examples and try to make it relevant to life, whatever way you choose, it's going to be up to you. But I would have to say people are more than just simply spiritual. They have physical needs, have physical bodies, and they have a mind with, honestly, where mental issues can really affect them. So we're multi-compartmented people, and multifaceted, I think, is the word for it. Mentally, we're mental, spiritual, physical, psychological. There's a few other parts there where this all matters, and you're trying to, if people want to come at one particular angle to try to fix all of these issues, I'm going to have to step back and say, this is an issue, this is a problem. And as far as balance goes, you can't balance the body on one point alone. Alright, I'll end there. Until next time.